I came in the one that says enter here.
Oh, yeah, well, hey, trust me, it's one originally too. You can never completely finish anything, and it's just like suffering around, you know? Thank you. Kids is usually distractions outside. Or at least we could go outside. Or I should go downstairs. They carded you? What the hell for? Oh, all right. I can tell you. I mean, I don't know about that, but yeah, yeah, there you go. The buyer with the realtor seemed to be ex-buyers. It's like, yeah, like, can I just do something to you? You did. Yeah, that's fine. How we doing over there? So can you give me a sticker over there? Call the meeting to order, call the roll.
Trustee Fenton.
Here.
Trustee Dodge.
Here.
Trustee Calandrello.
Here.
Trustee Healy.
Over here.
Trustee Katsinas.
Here.
Trustee Milani.
Here.
Mayor Pico.
Here.
Please rise for the pledge.
Of the United States of America, and to the republic for which it stands, one nation, under God, indivisible, with liberty and justice for all.
Approval of the June 1st, 2020 Committee of the Whole meeting minutes.
Sure.
Trustee Dodge.
I was just going to roar. So I can put the mask back on and say, move to approve.
Second.
Any comments? Call the roll.
Trustee Dodge.
Aye.
Trustee Fenton.
Aye.
Trustee Calandrello.
Here. Aye. Aye.
Trustee
Aye.
Healy.
Aye.
Trustee Katsinas.
Aye.
Trustee Milani.
Aye.
Mayor Pico.
Aye. I can see everyone got as much sleep as me this weekend. The meeting has started, everybody, so are we all good?
It's your blue jeans that threw us off.
It's what?
It's your blue jeans that threw us off.
Oh, okay.
Why use Zoom when you can lose blue jeans, right?
What's that?
You ready?
Here, everybody, I'm wearing blue jeans. You got it? All right.
Village multi-use path connectivity.
Mayor,
So, village multi-use path connectivity, this is going to be a briefing on something that we've asked for a while, which is connecting our bike paths. It's something that we've wanted to do for, 3 years, and we have it at plan, and we've continued to do it, so this is what this is about. And
Mayor Pico,
Trustee Dodge?
just, and thank you, because I think we've kicked around this topic and we've kicked around other topics, but with everything going on, this has been a long-run plan, so time to take a look at it. There may or may not be infrastructure bills in the future that help us fund this, and one of the things that's been pretty clear to me as we've all lived through the past couple, 3 months is how much people are actually using the paved pathways in the forest preserve. So I think there's really strong demand for this kind of thing, and it's long been talked about from this and previous boards. How do you connect everything and make it easier, better? So, as Mayor said, we've talked about this for a while, so let's start the planning, right?
Go ahead.
Thank you, Mayor, and thank you, Trustee Dodge. I'm going to do it
You're using it.
this side then.
Just hold it. Or not.
Most recently, we have been receiving quite a few compliments about what we have available in terms of bike paths. And so we'll make a brief presentation and show you what we have and then where we are going from here. I apologize, it will be hard for us to look at on the screen, but this is a map of what we have existing. It is, we'll provide you this presentation again, but in here you'll see, hopefully you can see the blue lines. Those are the lines that we have that where our paths exist. Most of them are sidewalk, which are 5 feet wide, but many of the newer ones are 8 feet wide, which is what we call as multi-use paths. The other thing which is somewhat visible here is a yellow line, which we tried as hard as we can to make it as thick as we can. It's in here, which we call is a spine of our bike path system or multi-use path system. There are gaps in here. For example, there's a gap in here that we haven't finished it. But overall, the intent is that we can complete this and run that as our primary multi-use path, which serves all other paths in the village. That's the intent. So there are, and we will point out to you, there are the sections that are missing. This is the overall map that you can see here. Again, there is a yellow line in here that, I apologize with the lighting system here. But the paths that are difficult, that think we are missing is that are along the east side, along 82nd Avenue. That is the part we think is a path that we should build all along the east side. The other one is this on the north side of the McGinnis Slough. I think we believe that is a very productive and a very good look in terms of what the area is around it. There is a lake right there. So that is a part that is also, we believe that it should be a very good add to our system on the north side of our town. And the notable gaps, as you can see, is 104th Avenue. We are currently working on it. It is in phase 1 of that, phase 2 of that study. We're also working on 167th. That is also in phase 1 of that study. And I said the 82nd Avenue, the McGinnis Slough, and the Wolf Road, those are the 3 we believe that are major corridors that should be included in our system.
Wolf Road is included in the Wolf Road project, widening the road. It will get done because
Correct.
of the complete street. So just like 159th, that will happen when Wolf Road is widened, correct?
That's correct. That's correct. So that's what we just mentioned. But there are also gaps in our system, anywhere from 100 to a few hundred feet, that is hard to find money in any of the grants, just because one development stopped and the next development hasn't started yet, or it has started further away. So there is a gap in connectivity from one point to the other point. That is not mentioned here, but it is in our system. And then that's one of the suggestions we have in addition to those 3 main corridors that we mentioned, is to fill in these gaps and where we find it more productive to make it multi-use path, which is 8 feet or as much as 10 feet wide, that we should fill those gaps with those wider pathways. So that's the overall. We are working with ComEd in some areas to make that happen. But what that would require, for example, for 82nd Avenue, is to set aside some funding so that we can complete phase 1. Same thing with the McGinnis Slough, is to get some money so that we can finish phase one. Without phase one, none of the grant approving institutions even look at our application.
I'm sorry, wait, say that again, make sure I got that right. Without what?
So if we do not have phase one completed.
Got it,
And we
okay.
go after a grant, it does not get any scoring that will get us that point. So they're really looking at us to finish phase one and then bring that application for grants.
Mr.
So
Mayor,
that is a challenge on our part.
Trustee Fenton.
so what would phase one say for 88 Second Avenue? What would that cost? Just roundabout.
Round numbers probably in a $100,000.
That's for the engineering.
That's phase one engineering, finding the viability. The actual engineering will happen in phase two. This is exploring all the challenges that we may have in that corridor, what permits we would need, the details of that.
But at least it would get us to a grant.
It will, yes, it
Application.
will set us for a grant.
It seems to make sense we should include that in our capital program for next year,
Yeah, and that's, thank you for that. So can you,
relative to the millions we spend.
yeah, no, well, can you go
It's a
back to
small
the map? Right, so clearly, that patch on 104th, once we get it to 159th, and then we've got a logical connection now, because it runs on 159th, and then getting people into the park,
That's true.
right? So this will bring up an issue for future debate. So like, for example, on South Wolf Road, some of that property we don't own that borders us, so that could be a separate conversation about, how we want to square up, some of these boundaries. But what I like about where we're getting to over the long march is people anywhere in Orland can get pretty much to any place else in Orland on a bike. That was always the hope, right? So we start filling in these gaps, and like I said, I mean, if you're anywhere out near Orland grasslands, that path is always busy. 6 a.m. to 6, 7, 8 p.m. It's now got a hell of a lot of folks using it, so that's the good thing. I'd love to see that flowing up 104th and a Centennial. I mean, it's interconnect the green spaces. That's the goal. If we can put it in the capital program and build it out over years, we'd be in great shape.
We have received more, again, the compliments in the pandemic time where people are spending more time outside and they're using these paths more than what they have done before.
It's one of the few things we can do, right?
We have done right.
Mr. Chairman,
Trustee Healy.
I'm not enthused about this practice in light of the pandemic and everything. I think, I just haven't heard how much it's going to cost and the timing of the cost. And to me, I'm just not excited about spending today's dollars on this when I'd rather make sure that we can afford the improvements we have. We've got the 143rd Street, going to cost a lot of money, and some other things. I just don't get excited about this. After the pandemic, will those crowds go back down to, some of these hardly being used at all or whatever? I'm just not enthused of the project. I'd like to find out the numbers of all 4 phases of the project. And that's just me, before we rush into it. I'm just not, if we were going to push off any project, I think this would be it.
Well, I think one of the important things to note here is we're looking to do phase one because we look for grant money from other agencies, which the grant money wouldn't come to us for any other projects. It would only come to us for these kind of bike path projects. So what Krishid is saying is where we have these gaps to build our infrastructure and our spine, if we don't have phase one done, we don't qualify for going out to that money. So it makes sense to have, in my opinion, to have the investment up front so that we can qualify for those other funding. It's not saying that we're taking funds away from our roads or our parks. It's basically setting us up so that we can get another funding source so that we can do these projects in addition to that without hitting our budget.
So Mayor, just to give you a reference point, like for 104th, the project cost is $1.7 million. So we would have to spend that $100,000, $200,000 up front to qualify that
Right.
$1.5 million that we can get out of that.
Mr. Chairman,
Trustee Healy?
I just wonder, are you talking about state funding or federal funding?
There's all kinds of different agencies that fund these things. They come out with grants for bike paths. Krishid, you can give them a list of the various, just give them a few of them.
Including there's county funds available. So there's federal grants, there's state grants, there are, I don't remember the names of that, I can get that to you, Trustee Haley, is that support the use of this outdoor bike path uses that you can get out of that.
Yeah, I'm just thinking that, how it's hard to count on future grants hard to count on today's grants from the state, no less future ones.
I think the point is that you can't qualify for the grants if you're not ready for them when they come. So that's where we've always taken advantage. We get a fairly large amount historically of STP dollars. Hasn't happened so much in the current administration, but in others, we've seen a, pretty good amount of funding from the STP dollars because we're the one town that can pay for 20% of the 20% match, and a lot of towns can't match those funds, so we end up getting more money towards us because we can match those funds. So that's the reason for setting ourselves up for that.
And as you know, Mayor, the Southwest Conference have passed this resolution now that requires the local agencies to pass a resolution to confirm that 20% is available. Otherwise, they're not even offering the next set of dollars if the local agency does not support that.
Yep. Okay.
So then, we're not taking any action tonight. We're going to start layering this into the plans.
We're layering this into next year's budget. We're not changing this year's budget. It'll be part of next
That
year's
was the point
capital
of the
budget.
conversation, was to take a look at it. Yep, thank you.
Mr. Mayor,
Trustee Calendrello?
so just in particular, I feel like the 104th Avenue it connects north to the south. So we're in phase 2 right now. So realistically, what do you think timetable? Because it's in phase 2 right now. So will phase 2 be done this year-ish, and then we'll find the money hopefully somewhere? Is that kind of?
We are hunting, we're already applied for 3 different grants. If any of those comes through, we'll be in construction in the next year or so.
Okay, so we're just looking for money pretty much.
This is exactly.
We were, based on everything that we had known about this, we expected it to be done this year, actually.
That's what I thought.
And Cook County had, what, $80 million?
That's what.
And we got none of it. So the $35 million that we provide to them every year, we got none of it for the project. And they have $80 million budgeted for projects just like this that were shovel-ready, and ours was. So we continue to put pressure on them for that. And they've come up with another new grant program, I believe, and so we're pushing on it again. Their excuse was that it wasn't engineered to their standards and that they were going to look at the engineering, which means it'll be done sometime when your kids go to high school. If it goes to their engineering department, because that's about how long it takes.
So in the next dollars that they have come up with, they have $15 million available, but they have a request for $31 million.
Okay.
There's challenges out there.
Thank you.
Any other questions or comments? Okay. Anything else, Krashid? Is that it?
That's it.
All right.
Thank you.
Move on to the next one.
Surface Transportation Program funding for 143rd Street from Old Cook Road to Wolf Road Improvement Project.
So this is talking about the surface transportation program monies that we were talking about. Turn this over to Krashid again to give everyone background on it.
So Mayor, in the previous years, when STP fund allocate funds for local municipality, then we are able to use it whenever that is available, whenever we are ready to use it. That is still the case. The only difference that they have made this year is that moving forward, anytime we are ready to use our own dollars, we have to go through our board to confirm that the remaining 20% that is village obligation is available. And without that resolution passed by the board, they will not entertain to allow the use of the funds that was allocated to a local municipality. So the purpose of this was we just wanted to make sure that you're aware of this, that moving forward, anytime, whether it's 143rd entire corridor or John Humphrey and 143rd, we'll be coming back to you for a resolution to confirm that our portion of 20% is available before the construction could start.
Okay, and just so everyone knows, the reason for doing this is because a lot of towns have gotten there, they've gone down, all this paperwork's been done, everything's been done, they get there and they go, oh, we don't have the money. And then they're scrambling, and a lot of times the Southwest Conference loses the money, another conference gets it because it ends up not being spent. So they want to make sure that the money's available. So that's what this is, just procedural. And for us, it's not an issue.
It is not. The only challenge for other municipalities probably is that if they don't use this money, then this money, whatever was allocated to them, will go to a regional fund, and then it will be totally out of this area, or it could be but it will be lost its impact at the Southwest Conference level.
Mayor Peak.
Trustee Dodge.
So, as has been the case for many years, we have to take advantage of our financial strength to front the money for work on state roads in order to get the state road project moving. That's not changed in a long stretch.
Correct.
That's just going to be the same thing with the jurisdictional transfer on 143rd, because in order to fix 143rd between Harlem and LaGrange, we had to go through this.
Yes.
And we're coming up on an interesting part of its life cycle with that road. So we have no choice, because the state's been doing this forever.
That's true.
Next.
Dr. Marsh, Stellwagen, IDNR Grant Obligation Transfer Agreement.
Mr. Chairman,
Trustee Malani.
I move to recommend to the Board of Trustees to authorize staff to develop a plan to transfer IDNR grant obligations from Stellwagen Farms to Dr. Marsh. And I move to recommend to the Board of Trustees to authorize staff to develop plans to implement phases 1 and 2 of the proposed plan as presented to the Committee of the Whole, which may include design, estimated construction costs, construction schedule, and construction phasing if needed.
Okay, can you, staff, can you give us a background on this?
So, can you find that? Where is that file? I uploaded that on that thing.
Who made the second, last one? Who seconded?
Can you open that?
Oh, yeah, did somebody second that?
Second.
Thanks.
You're welcome.
So a quick update on the history of this project, and then Travis from CBEL is going to give a presentation, and we'll come back to some discussion about cost and what options we have available in terms of us to complete this project. So the purpose of today's presentation is to start the process of transferring the obligation that we had when we purchased Stellwagen Farm, and we wanted to continue farming on it, which does not allow IDNR, Illinois Department of Natural Resources, because they gave us $2 million to purchase that land, and for us to continue farming on it, we would have to either pay them $2 million back or find another property within the village that was purchased after 2009 and convert that into an open space and get rid of the obligation that we have on Stellwagen Farm. So that is what the purpose of this project is, and we'll walk you through that detail in a minute. And Travis will talk to you 4 different phases of construction that is possible over there, and we will discuss with you the cost estimates for each option, and I'll leave it at that. Travis, you go ahead. Travis?
So as Khurshid mentioned, the Stellwagen Family Farm was purchased by the Village Open Lands program in 2002, and it's sort of difficult to see, but this is 108th Avenue, and the farm is this large parcel here. The village constructed a bike path, since we were discussing bike path around the perimeter to provide access, and the farmstead is here. It's about 60 acres of what was once 100 and some plus acre farm. So over the years, the Stellwagen Foundation was formed by members of the Stellwagen family and members of the community, and they've developed different concept plans. This one was from back in 2008. This one was from 2015, and they all have different concepts that they discuss using the Stellwagen Farm for, whether it's bring school kids in to show them history, but the constant vision across all of the concepts is to have the farm be a working farm. And as Khurshid mentioned, the portion of the funds that came from IDNR, the Illinois Department of Natural Resources, was from the Open Land Trust Program, which requires those funds to be used to preserve property in open space or for recreational purposes. So to relieve ourselves of those obligations, the village proposed a transfer of property from the Stellwagen Farm to the Dr. Marsh property. Dr. Marsh property this is 151st, this is Wolf, this is what is 155th, and it's this parcel here, 60 some plus acres. It's kind of difficult to see, but this goes along with what Khurshid was mentioning earlier. There's a proposed Gallagher and Henry development right here, the Laurels of Spring Creek. And it has not begun, but it was approved several years ago. So they'll be going in and putting their own bike paths. There's already an existing bike path system along 151st and down this portion. And then this is Arbor Lake over here, and there's an existing bike path system in here. So it made sense to provide access internally for the Dr. Marsh, and then hopefully eventually, once this piece develops, this is still owned by Gallagher and Henry also, as is this parcel here. So the idea would be to eventually connect the Dr. Marsh parcel to the Arbor Lake parcel over there to provide connectivity for this section of the village. And then playing that forward, this just shows the kind of vision at the time would be to provide a greenway from the Dr. Marsh property. This is DeLuga Woods, and this is all the Spring Creek watershed, and then this is Messenger Woods over in Homer Glen, which is a huge forest preserve. So eventually the idea would be to provide access to all of these green space openings. So the two requirements or obligations that IDNR requires as a part of the grant program were parking and access. There's no clear definition of those, but those are the two requirements. So together with village staff, we prepared a trail restoration and enhancement plan for Dr. Marsh, and due to the size and scope, it was split into 4 different phases. But this is the overall plan. As you can see, when Spring Creek comes in under 151st, it splits into two channels, and it kind of forms a marshy wetland complex there on the eastern side. But as a result, there's a lot of wetland, a lot of floodplain, and it makes for an interesting site. So phase 1 would be the parking access for the site. It comes off of 155th Street down here, and I apologize, like her sheet is really hard to see, but it provides an entrance drive off of 155th, and then parking here. There's 10 spaces proposed with grading for another 10 for future expansion if need be. There's water and toilet facilities and lighting provided in the parking lot access. So that would be proposed phase 1. Phase 2 would be the first portion of the bike path itself. It would provide access along the southern portion and then immediately make a turn to the north, cross Spring Creek again. There's 2 crossings of Spring Creek, one here and one here. And this is this is a came, is what it's called in technical geological terms. It's what's left over when the glacier melted and deposited that soil there. So it's about 25 feet higher than the surrounding area. It's a really nice viewpoint. I don't know if anybody's ever been out to the Dr. Marsh, but so the idea would be to provide access to that. There would be these locations, scenic overlooks at the locations shown here. So that would be the first, second phase, but the first portion of the bike path to be installed or constructed. Just to go back one second, sorry. And the majority, there are 2 different types of bike paths being installed. The one is boardwalk, and that is because it's easier to get permitted. It's less invasive to the wetlands, and then there is asphalt portion. So that's where there's 2 different demarcations of bike paths. The third phase would take the route north along the western property line, north towards 151st, and it would tie into the existing bike path on 151st. It was shifted a little bit to the east to stay away from the existing residents here at the El Grande Estates, to provide them privacy and not disturb as much of the existing topography over there. So anyway, it ties into 151st up there, the bike path up there. That's phase 3. Phase 4 would take the eastern side from the bike path 151st down along the Spring Creek Estates. This is Spring Creek Estates. And to the south, there would be outlooks along this section as well. And then eventually, it would tie back into the proposed Gallagher and Henry development that I mentioned earlier, the Laurels of Spring Creek, with this southern or eastern connection here with another overlook. So these are just some different examples of parking lots in these types of environments, mostly forest preserves, open spaces. This one here has the curbed parking, it's ADA accessible, and these are all decisions that the board would make about, the staff and board would make about what you guys would like to have out there. This is another example where it's more natural, it drains off, there's no curbs, there's no sidewalk, it's also not ADA accessible. The two different types of paths that I mentioned that we have out there are the boardwalk sections. This one here is a reverse curve boardwalk, provides the access to those wetland areas. This is another one with an overlook, like that we showed on the plans. And then, of course, this one has the railing and spans a creek, which is similar, very similar to what we'd have in a couple locations at the Dr. Marsh. This is just two of the boardwalk sections under construction. You can see it's minimally invasive because it just provides small supports for the beams to go across the wetland without being as invasive as a asphalt path would be. And then these are just some examples of the open space type paths that we've installed in other areas. We've got the turf shoulders, so it still provides support for the asphalt path. And then the split rail fence and gravity boulder wall just provides accents and support instead of a typical retaining wall. These are two different types of overlooks. This one here is gravel with stone benches. This is an asphalt paved one with benches installed, wood benches about. That's what we have in the plans, but all these are obviously can be modified as need be. The current plan does include restoration of the entire parcel. This is the plan. So this is the upland area that I was mentioning, but essentially all wetlands would be restored as a part of this. That is not required by the IDNR, but it is certainly would enhance the site, and that was the staff's direction during the development of the plan. Sort of lastly here, the other amenities that we added to the site that I mentioned earlier were toilet facilities, parking lot lighting, and then signage for the residents to know what's happening out there. These are from the Arbor Lake example. And with that, I will turn it back over to Kashid to discuss the costs.
Just, can you move to the next slide? So we looked at the entire project and see what it cost. So phase one on this project, if we just do just the phase one, is $1.5 million. Phase two is 1.7, 3 is 1.8, and 4 is 1.2. If we do a multi-contract, multi-year project, so $6 million project. The challenge here is by the agreement, we have to make these improvements, otherwise village is liable for $2 million in grant. I looked into it, whether phase one only will suffice their requirements. And we believe that it will be very difficult because it only builds a parking lot and an access point. We do not believe that the IDNR will accept that as an equal. So what we think is that a minimum of phase one and phase two is what is needed to get rid of our obligation from Stellwagen. But if we do that entire project in one attempt, it costs $4 million. If we don't do that, we have to pay back $2 million. Thank you. So that's the condition we have is a minimum of $3 million is required, but an additional $1 million could finish the project in its entirety. The site itself is a very difficult site because of the wetland and whatever is out there. The permitting process with the Army Corps is going to be an expensive and time-consuming process, plus the engineering that we require. And the construction per square foot, if I want to call it that way, is pretty expensive on that. So we'll leave it, for the board to discuss and make a determination of which way you want us to go.
Mr. Mayor?
Josephine.
Well, it's a nice presentation. I had it all here, but that's the gold version of what staff would like. And I'm sure, Travis would like the same thing. But we don't have to do all of this to meet that obligation. Right now, there is a path out there. I know the kids use it constantly because they have little parties out there, and there's little nooks where they've even built little huts and stuff out there. So people have access to this. So I think what we need to do, because Travis even mentioned that they are requiring access and parking, but they didn't give you any details on what that what they're looking for. So a gravel parking lot and access into there, that's what I'm reading here for minimal what we have to do. I don't think at this time, anybody on the board, I mean, Trustee Healy just said he didn't want to spend $100,000 to look into the bike paths. Nobody's going to want to spend 6.2. And I still think there's still some legalities that need to be looked into with that $2 million grant with the Stellwagen farm and stuff. I still think this is a gray area. And I think there's more to this that needs to be looked into. But to spend that kind of money at Dr. Marsh in this economy, I think is ludicrous. And to even present this is kind of out there when we can do the minimal. Not saying that it's not an important piece of property, but right at this time, right now, it's the kids that are using it, and, apparently they having fun out there, so. But I just think it's ridiculous to go with this. If we had tons of money and we could get grants to pay for all this, great, go ahead with all of this. But we don't even have toilet facilities or lighting facilities at other locations, and yet we're putting this one where it's in the middle of, nowhere. I mean, it's a nice location, and we use it all the time for mitigation, but I just don't understand why we would even look at doing, this grandiose project when we could do the minimal and still meet whatever requirements IDNR is requiring. And I still think, and I mentioned this to George, that staff needs to sit down with the new board, or the new individuals that are on IDNR, because they're not the same people that were there in 2002 when the agreements were all written and the purpose, because ever since that property was acquired, it was stated that it was going to be a working farm. So a working farm means that you're plowing the dirt. I mean, we even planned on having animals out there. So, which is still recreation, it's still open space. We accommodated all the prairie land and everything that was required out there. So I don't know, in my opinion, I think we're jumping way ahead of the game here, and to spend that money is insane. That's all I have to say for now.
Anyone else? Trustee Healy?
Yeah, I'm just curious, are we in the business of running a farm? I mean, do we have we're supposed to get a working farm? Could somebody define it? I mean, why are we're going to have employees plow the fields and,
No.
I mean, what's a working, I'm just confused by a working farm. We're going to employ the people, they'll be some of the best paid farmers in the state, I think, work farm hands with their pensions and everything.
Want me to
But
explain it?
I don't know how we're ever going to make money on a working farm.
Trustee Fenton?
Working farm, Jim Stellwagen, the son of Mr. Stellwagen, who we bought the farm from, farms it. And he pays the village every year a dollar amount, and that's called leasing the land, so that's a working farm. We're not out there plowing. We have no employees out there plowing. He does, and he pays us.
And how much do we get?
It's over $3,000
$3,000
for his plot that he plows.
a year?
It's 3,000 something. It might be up to 5,000 by now.
Bottom line is, we don't run the farm. It's leased to the family that originally owned the farm. They still farm it.
Mayor Pico?
Trustee Dodge?
So, Khurshid, could you go back to the previous page? Because if I'm not mistaken, your cost numbers were a lot smaller. I like this page better. Yeah, literally. All right, enough joking, right? So, when we went into Stellwagen, we had some specific purposes, and I think we've lived up to those. Same thing with Dr. Marsh in terms of the open lands. Check. Tell me why we're coming up on this conversation now. Is there a deadline with IDNR to get certain things done? I just want to make sure I understand the pressure in the system for making these proposals.
So
Going under the bus.
it's been sitting out there since 2014 that we needed to get this done. So the reason we brought.
What is it? A formal contractual obligation with the state or a good planning idea? Because those are two different levels of urgency, in my opinion.
So the obligation is already in place in that agreement
Okay.
that was executed, but that
What's the deadline?
Excuse me?
What's the deadline?
It does not have a deadline on it. However, they could come to, go ahead.
Well, I was just going to say, no, it recently became a urgent issue when Sarah from the Recreation Department went to apply for new grants with IDNR. She was told that there was an outstanding issue with an old grant, and the village would not be allowed to proceed with any new grants until that old grant was
Okay,
cleared up.
fair enough. So they actually,
So
on
there
the
is a
one
sense of
working,
urgency,
the
got
one
it.
working
Just doesn't
computer
apply
at the
for any more
state, they
IDNR.
found the records. Got it, okay. I guess, you know, Mayor Peacock, what I'd like to really do is, I get the attraction and appeal of having Stellwagen in its current design as the so-called working farm with the family, but I don't think any of us have an intention of having farmers on staff, just so we're clear. But at some point, we might not be doing that, correct? At some point, I mean, who knows, right? So,
I couldn't have predicted today 3 months ago, could you?
yeah, that's true too, right? So I guess, I mean, I get Kathy's point. I understand what we're trying to do. I still very much support the idea of open space, whether it's passive or active, right? We got to do this. Sure feels to me like with everything coming at us in terms of all the costs, we've got to be really smart about the sequence and the timing for all this in terms of the hit to the cash. It's that simple in my mind.
Any other comments?
Mr. Mayor?
Trustee Calendro?
Yeah, I think we just maybe make a phone call and talk to the organization and ask for some more time and get some more agreement. I mean, I think with everything that's going on, I think a phone call and maybe getting a pushback on an official timeline so Sarah can maybe get some more grants in the back end, I think it would make sense. You know, I'm sure we can call Springfield and find a phone number that works or will answer us. So I think that's what we need to do. Spending that much money now, especially what's going to come down the pike, not going to be good. So like the idea, don't know if we got the money for it at this time.
Sorry, could you repeat the first part of that? I didn't. What about a phone call?
Making a
sure-
phone call to IDNR.
Oh, okay.
All right, and have a meeting.
Any other? Well, they may not be working.
Got the quarter.
Not right now at this point. You know, you can pull out your phone, Mike.
Any other comments? So I guess my comment is $6.2 million when we have Schuessler Park we're going to redo, which is used a heck of a lot more. Centennial Park is 27 years old, so we have upgrades we want to do there. I think that's money better spent. I think what we need to do is we need to talk with IDNR and we need to understand the timeline, the real timeline. And if it means something contractual so that they're happy to back them off of other IDNRs, that's fine, or other IDNR grants that we're looking for. And then also, what's the minimum required to satisfy them? I think those two things we need. I think the board, if the minimum required is X and the grandiose plan would cost $4 million more to do it in pieces and cost $1 million more, the board may say spend the extra $1 million and make it so. But I think we need to know what the minimums are. That's the important thing, because this is it's a nice piece of property, but it's not going to be heavily used like our other parks. And to invest 6.2, I mean, look what it cost us for Humphrey, which is going to be great because that's going to be heavily used, and it's half of that. And we did the full Monty there. We upgraded everything. So it just doesn't make sense, I think, to spend that money. So I guess I would entertain a motion to table.
So moved.
Second.
Call the roll.
Who seconded that?
I second.
Trustee Fenton?
Aye.
Trustee Calendro?
Aye.
Trustee Dodge?
Aye.
Trustee Healy? Trustee Katsinas?
Aye.
Trustee Malani?
Aye.
Mayor Pico?
Aye. So I think you guys have your marching orders on that. Okay.
Cheap. Or small numbers,
Non-
right?
Any
Really
any
small cost
non-scheduled
numbers.
visitors to speak? I see mostly staff here, staff and regulars. Okay. I'll entertain a motion to adjourn.
So moved.
Second.
Call the roll.
Trustee Dodge?
Aye.
Trustee Fenton?
Aye.
Trustee Calendro?
Aye.
Trustee Healy? Trustee Katsinas?
Aye.
Trustee Malani?
Aye.
Mayor Pico?
Aye. We're adjourned.